Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're not doing the usual thing. We're not here to label AI as good or bad. And honestly, we're definitely not looking at another tutorial for the perfect prompt. Nah. Instead, we're going to explore a really fascinating observational record by Tommy Yoshida, also known as Tsutomu Yoshida. The goal here is just to sit with some unfinished thoughts. You and I, we're in the middle of this massive technological transition, right? So we're going to intentionally observe how language, technology, and human judgment are all crashing into each other in real time. We're going to leave the natural friction of these concepts exactly as they are, no neat little bows, so we can really deeply explore this growing human responsibility to verify our work.
I mean, think about it. If you're a modern knowledge worker, you probably feel this shared anxiety right now. Literally every single day, there's a new model, a new update, and your timeline is just flooded with this immense pressure to find the absolute correct way to use AI. Honestly, it kind of feels like being shoved into a speeding car without knowing the destination. We've all been sold this grand promise of ultimate efficiency, but today, let's look past that. Let's deeply observe a massive, fundamental shift that's happening right under our feet. We are moving away from simply asking AI questions and transitioning into actually entrusting it with complex, connected work.
To really wrap our heads around this shift, we kind of need to look at how we're working right now. Currently, our workflow is incredibly linear. It's basically a ping-pong match. You hit the ball over the net by asking for, say, a blog draft. The AI hits it back. Then you act as this little toll booth. You verify the text, you make your tweaks, and then you tell it to turn that specific approved text into a social media post. Nothing moves to the next stage until you personally give it the green light. But this incoming era of AI, it completely removes those toll booths. We're hurtling toward a future of what we call connected output.
Yoshida's observation brilliantly illustrates what this connected future actually looks like in practice. Imagine putting an input in, but the AI doesn't just spit out one single draft. Instead, that one initial request instantly spawns a long-form article, a LinkedIn post, a whole thread of social media posts, visual image ideas, hashtags, reference lists, literally all at the exact same time. The AI absolutely does not pause for your little toll booth approval on step 1 before it barrels ahead to step 2. It just goes.
To really ground this idea, let's use a culinary metaphor. Think of our current linear model as having the AI act as your sous chef. You're the one managing the prep. The sous chef brings you a chopped onion. You inspect it, you approve it, and then, and only then, do you ask for chopped carrots. You are in total control of every single step. But in this new connected workflow model, the AI becomes the executive chef. You give an order for a nice dinner, and boom, suddenly a fully plated, interconnected 5-course meal is dropped right onto your table. The kitchen handled every single intermediate step without you even peeking in.
So here's the absolute kicker. Your job? It's just mutated into something completely different. When a massive, overwhelming 5-course meal is dropped on your desk all at once, well, you aren't managing the cooking process anymore, are you? You've been placed directly in the position of a food critic. Your entire professional function is shifting away from manually producing the content and morphing into painstakingly critiquing a huge volume of interconnected material. You now have to taste every single dish to see if it actually matches the craving you had when you first sat down to order.
And that overwhelming volume introduces a really massive risk. We can call it navigational drift. You see, large language models are essentially just probabilistic prediction engines. So if your initial prompt is even a tiny bit vague, the AI doesn't stop to ask you for clarification. It just guesses. And in a connected workflow, that guess instantly becomes the rock-solid foundation for the very next task. It's exactly like an airplane taking off. If your heading is off by just 1 single degree at the start, the flight feels perfectly smooth, right? But 5 hours later, that tiny error has compounded and you land in the wrong country entirely. By step 4 of this connected workflow, you're staring at a massive pile of perfectly polished garbage.
This actually brings us to a fascinating variable Yoshida introduces from his Japanese cultural context. In Japan, there's this concept called kuki o yomu, which literally translates to reading the air. It's all about the reality of high-context communication. As human beings, we rely incredibly heavily on unsaid nuances, implied meanings, and shared context that we never ever explicitly write down. We say stuff like, hey, just make it sound good, and other humans just understand the vibe. But a language model? It cannot read the air. It is completely 100% blind to the unsaid.
So what happens when that machine actually encounters the unsaid? Well, it just sees a void. And because it's mandated to finish the job, it fills that silence with its own mathematical, explicit guesses. It just bulldozers right over your subtle human nuance. And remember, because these tasks are all connected now, it amplifies that specific error across every single document it generates. But honestly, the most terrifying part, the polish itself acts as camouflage. The final product looks grammatically flawless. The tone sounds super authoritative. The formatting is absolutely pristine. But the actual soul of your original intent, it has completely vanished.
Now, you might be thinking this is some brand new generative AI problem, but Yoshida brilliantly connects this back to a historical truth in legacy software engineering. In traditional system development, there's this foundational principle. If the input requirements are flawed, the output will be flawed. Imagine, for a second, engineers building a super complex payroll software. They write perfectly flawless, totally bug-free code. But if the tax brackets they were given in the initial requirements were outdated, the system runs incredibly smoothly, but every single paycheck it prints out is highly illegal.
It really leaves us confronting this stark reality. Something can be perfectly flawless and yet perfectly wrong. When you get that 5-course meal of AI content and it totally misses the mark, the machine isn't broken. It didn't crash. It is confidently and flawlessly executing a deeply flawed premise that was provided by you, the human. Basically, AI is simply taking an old systems engineering lesson and making it painfully visible at a massive, everyday scale for all of us.
And you know what? This exposes the ultimate trade-off here. It's the paradox of efficiency. There is a deep psychological difference between the fulfilling energy of creating something from scratch and the sheer bureaucratic fatigue of auditing it. Sure, writing a thoughtful email involves friction, yes, but it's engaging. On the flip side, reading 15 different interconnected AI variations and painstakingly stress testing them for completely invisible logical flaws, that is just exhausting. You are no longer laying bricks to build a house. You've essentially been reassigned as the building inspector, forced to examine every single load-bearing wall of a giant mansion that was constructed in 3 seconds.
As manual production becomes fully automated, our entire professional value is rapidly concentrating at the very beginning and the very end of the process. Your new, highly valued skills are now hyper-focused on judgment. You have to be able to define the premise with absolute clarity. You have to learn how to articulate the unsaid for a math model. It requires really rigorous upfront thinking before you ever let the machine run. And honestly, perhaps most importantly, restraint. The wisdom to know what not to create. Just because an AI can generate 50 interconnected posts in 3 seconds doesn't mean the world actually needs to consume them. Which leaves us with one final, incredibly provocative question to ponder together. We've established that our job right now is shifting to verifying the premise, simply because AI can't read the air. But imagine a future where the technology evolves so much that it actually can perfectly anticipate our unsaid needs. What if it automatically corrects its own logical drift? If the machine handles all the execution and flawlessly understands exactly what we want, is the sheer act of wanting something the only human job left? It's a lot to think about. Until then, keep questioning those flawless outputs and never, ever stop ruthlessly verifying your premise.